So I'm recording my homily for what would have been the 18th Sunday in Ordinary Time. Actually, it was the feast day of the Transfiguration, and I'm gonna focus on that theme, the Transfiguration, for this homily. If you're wondering where I'm at, I'm actually on the Hood Canal, and I was going to visit a few people, and so I figured this was a great place. The island right out here. I used to actually own a little piece of property out there. I was building a little hermitage out there. And then discovered I had a tendency to work a little too hard when I went out there, and so I since sold it. But it's a beautiful place out here. In the mission that I have, the mission where I'm serving, St. Anne's, the little church is actually pretty close to the beach. It's right on the water in Tulalip Bay, and Saturday evenings when we have Mass, I like to go down there a little bit early just so I can spend time praying and just go down. There's a little grassy area right by the boat launch, and so actually I'm right here next to a boat launch, and so I'd go down there just to pray. And Saturday afternoons, my prayer usually is something like, God, help me with my homily, because I don't have anything. And so just waiting for some inspiration, and yes, and Saturday was no exception, and so I was waiting for some inspiration, trying to think of a few things, and lo and behold, these 4 Labrador retrievers come running around, right? Now, they were with somebody who was launching a boat. I'm going to tell you a story, and the details are important. I'm not just rambling. Okay, so these 4 Labrador retrievers, they are having a blast. They're just running around. They're running in the water. They're running out of the water. They're running in the water, and they're just having a great time. They don't have a care in the world. It's running around. So the family there, the mom and the dad, they're loading 2 jet skis into the water during this whole thing, and they're really not watching the dogs. The dogs are just running all around. Well, at one point, these 4 Labrador retrievers decide to come up into the grassy area where I'm at. And it's a very small grassy area. It'd be like the front lawn of a house. Very small, little picnic table there. So I'm just sitting in the grass. And I'm thinking, oh boy, these labs, they're all wet. They're going to come up. They're going to shake the water off right around me. And so I'm kind of bracing for that. And they don't do that. But I did witness something that I would say was quasi-miraculous. All 4 of these Labrador retrievers come up right around me. And at the exact same time, I mean, we're talking about like the Blue Angels synchronization. At the exact same time, all 4 of them took a poop right around me. It was quite astounding. Now, I can't say enjoyable, but it was quite astounding. And one of which was so close to me that I could have petted him while he was doing his business. Now, he was watching me the whole time, and he had this great big smile on his face, and he's just loving life, right? These labs, as they finished their business, they went off and started running in the water again and just having fun. So these labs, they don't have really a vision for life. Life, they just kind of go with it. They're just having fun, right? Now, I talk to people every once in a while, and you ask them, what's life about? And life is just about having fun. It's just about enjoying life. But you know what? When we live that way, we become consumers. We just consume. If it's just about fun, then it's just about me, and I just consume, and I consume, and consume. And our culture is struggling with that and I have to say, we are all part of it. I'm part of it. We consume far more than we could ever need, and yet we just keep consuming. Now, we'd say, well, we're enjoying life, right? But you know what we leave behind? You know what we leave behind for the next generation? We leave behind for others around us? Poop. That's all we leave behind. It's just like these dogs. They just take it all in and then they just poop, and he didn't care about me. He didn't care about anybody else. They didn't pick up their poop. They just left it there for others. And so when we become really and truly just products of our culture, where we're just consumers, all we leave is poop. Now, I don't think Jesus necessarily created us just to do that. So obviously when we start speaking of vision of the purpose of our life and why we're here, is something more than just having fun and just enjoying life. There's something more to it, right? Now, the Transfiguration happens on this mountain, right? So this mountaintop. So Jesus is transfigured, but he's not all alone. he brings 3 disciples. He doesn't just bring one, he brings 3. And so you're already getting a sense that there's this importance of community. And so Peter, James, and John are there to witness, to be part of it. But then Jesus is not just transfigured alone. You have these elements of the Trinity, right? And you have the element of the God the Father and the Spirit. You have the cloud and you have the voice. But even at that, not just that, you also have Moses and Elijah. So you have this whole community gathered there of ones expressing faith. Now, this is important. This is important, and I will get back to that. But really what you have developing is an image of heaven. And so Jesus wanted, at least for a moment, maybe not for an extended period of time, but he wanted for a moment for Peter, James, and John to see heaven, to taste heaven, just to get a taste of it, right? Now Peter, he's really enjoying it. So he says, hey, Jesus, let's build some tents. Let's stay here. Let's stay here and just enjoy it. And Jesus is saying, no. That while you're here on earth, it's not going to be just living in heaven here on earth, because there's a mission, there's work to be done here on earth. But he still wanted them to see the vision. So now the vision is not just something to be seen, but when he shows them heaven, he wants to give them a purpose and say, this is what you were made for. This is what you're striving for. And so heaven is our vision. It's the purpose. It's why we exist. Now, when I was in the seminary, this is about 15 years ago, the rector of the seminary was giving a homily. And it's very rare when I remember a homily specifically that's 15 years in the past. But I remember his homily, and it was on the feast day of the Transfiguration. And so what he was talking about in the Transfiguration, he actually didn't talk about the Transfiguration a whole lot, but what he talked about was that after he gives the disciples this image of heaven, they immediately turn back down the hill and go to Jerusalem. And they're going to Jerusalem for the last time. And this is where Jesus is going to fulfill the mission. This is where he's going to bring everything together, and this is where he's going to die for his people. And so he was saying that there is a mission here for us. We are not just here on earth just to enjoy life, just to kick back, just to poop. We're here for more than that. We have a mission. And that mission is not just something we create. That mission is given to us by God because God gave us the vision. And the vision is not just something we create. Now, a lot of people, and I've talked about this in many of my past homilies, when people start thinking about heaven, they go into this default mode of creating a vision of heaven that they like. It's fishing, it's golfing, it's watching football, it's Seahawks, it's whatever the person likes, they think that that's heaven. It's very narcissistic, it's very selfish, and that's not heaven. Jesus gives us what heaven truly is. He created heaven for us. We can't change it or manipulate it. As soon as we start trying to do that, we completely lose our mission and we lose the vision, and we're going in the wrong path. Okay? And so this vision is very specific. It's given to us, something specific that we should strive for. And then the mission is based on that, and we can't change them. We can deny them. We can try to not do them. We can try to do our own thing. But eventually, I think we'll realize that we're doing the wrong thing. Okay, so when we come to Mass on Sunday, we're getting a taste of the Transfiguration, aren't we? Moses and Elijah are there in the reading of the Word. You have Jesus being transfigured before us in a very special way in the body and blood of Jesus Christ. And so we come to Mass, and it's like we get a taste of heaven. But then we're supposed to go back out and share that with others. That's our mission. And so we can't stay there all day and all week. We get a taste of it, and then we bring it. A lot of times people will tell me, they'll say, well, if I don't go to Mass anymore because, I just worship God in my backyard. I don't need to go with all the hypocrites. I don't need to go to church on Sunday. I got my backyard. I worship God there. So the reality is what's happening there is the person is just worshiping themselves. because they created their backyard. They made it beautiful. They put their little fountain in. They got their little bird bath. They got their little vegetable garden, whatever. And so when they begin to say that they're worshiping God, they're just worshiping themselves because they're the creator. And the reality is they don't want their neighbor there. That's why it's their backyard. It's their property. And so as they're doing that, they are really and truly losing the vision, and they are also losing the mission. What they're gaining is isolation. They're denying their neighbor and they're denying God. And so they're isolating themselves into this bubble that's all about them, but it's intrinsically lonely. It's intrinsically isolated. And I was reading an article the other day written by a Catholic psychiatrist. And this Catholic psychiatrist was reflecting on how our culture is becoming more and more lonely and isolated. And so he's just reflecting on that. And so one of the statistics he shared with us he said, in the 1980s, about 20% of Americans would identify themselves as lonely. And now, today, 40% of Americans identify themselves as lonely. And so I like to propose that part of this is because we are simply, and the author proposed this also, we are simply losing the vision. We're losing a communal vision of heaven that was created for all of us. God created it for us, to be with Him. And so as we deny God and as we deny our neighbor, as we push our neighbor away, we become lonely. Now, that results in depression and other things. The author goes a little bit deeper because part of this article was about actually suicide. And so in suicide, he brings up a statistic, and he says that a person who attends church every week, person who attends church every Sunday, is 5 times less likely to commit suicide than somebody who doesn't. And so he just raises the question, is like, that's phenomenal. Why aren't psychiatrists, psychologists, why aren't they telling their patients, go to church every week, believe in God, make faith real? Why aren't they telling them this? When the reality is, the exact opposite is happening. Fewer and fewer people are going to church. In fact, the bulk of people who do go to church, they don't go every Sunday, they don't go every week, they go when it's convenient. And so you have this discrepancy that's happening in our culture. It's no pun intended, it's schizophrenic. You have a person who doesn't want to be lonely, they don't want to be depressed, and yet they're avoiding those exact things that give them vision, that give them purpose, that give them contentment in life, that give them mission, give them purpose here, and yet they're fleeing from it. Now I want to go back to the story with these 4 Labrador Retrievers, because they gave me my homily, so I'm going to go back to them. As they began to launch those 2 jet skis, the family, the labs didn't care, right? They're just running around. The mom gets on one of the jet skis, the mom of the family, person, not dog, right? The mom. She gets on one, and then they had like a guest with them. It was like a friend of the family. He gets on one. And so they just barrel out into the bay. They fly out into the bay. And so they're going really fast. The dad of the family, he begins just to load everything back up in the truck, and he's going to gather the dogs up, and they're going to head on, and he's going to go park and do whatever he's going to do. So as he's doing that, he begins to look for the dogs because he needs to get them back in the truck. Well, he only finds 2 of them. And so he's not too worried about it at first because he's still busy with things. But I was watching this whole thing go down. 2 of the dogs immediately followed the jet skis and just started swimming out into the bay. Well, nobody was watching them. The mom on the jet skis, she didn't notice what they were doing because she's heading out. And the dad didn't notice at all. And so here you have these 2 dogs, and they're having fun. They're just side by side, just kind of bumping into each other as they're swimming out in the bay. Well, it didn't take long before they were past the jetty of the marina, and they were way out there. Now, I start getting a little concerned. I know dogs, and you can kind of tell, things about them. And so when they were swimming, at first the water level was like right here, so they're swimming pretty good. They're just having fun. But then as they started getting farther and farther out, you could see the water line getting higher and higher, and they started struggling. You could tell they were getting tired. Now, I knew that if nobody did something, those two dogs were going to die, because they were still swimming out. They were following the jet skis. Even though those jet skis were long gone, they were following the jet skis. Now, eventually the man realizes what's happening. And so he's looking for the dogs, and he sees them way out there, and so he begins to scream at the dogs, and he's screaming, and you can tell he's really getting nervous. Just the way he's talking to other people, he's really getting nervous. But he's screaming and screaming. The dogs don't hear him. They're not turning around. Well, as I'm watching this, I'm getting concerned too, because it'd be a horrible thing if those two dogs died, drowned out there. Well, the mom, who's on the jet ski, and she is really far out, all of a sudden I just see her stop dead in the water. And I couldn't, without binoculars, I couldn't see what was happening, but she just stopped dead in the water. After a few minutes, maybe like 5 minutes, she comes barreling back into the bay on the jet ski. Now, at one point, she sees the dogs, and she realizes, she's like, oh my gosh, these dogs were way out there. And so she begins to kind of herd the dogs back in, bring them back in. But she didn't come in because she saw the dogs. So when she finally came in, I could hear her talking with her husband, and he's also kind of like, okay, how come you came back in? It was a good thing, but he was wondering why she did. And she said, well, I was watching you, and I knew something was wrong. I just knew something was wrong, because normally you load everything up and you're gone, and you weren't leaving. And so I waited just to check. And I thought, wow. So she didn't come back because of the dog. She came back because she knows her husband so well that she knew when something wasn't right. Women are amazing that way, because if that had been me out there, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have cared. It just didn't. But she was fulfilling her mission. There was something about her just intrinsic mission that she cared about her husband, and she was going to watch. And in the end, she ended up saving 2 of their dogs, because they were going to drown out there. It was beautiful. She was doing her mission. Now the thing is, those 2 dogs, they were just having fun, and they almost died because of it. They didn't have a care in the world, and they almost died because of it. The only reason they're alive is because somebody was fulfilling their mission. They were doing something more than just having fun. You know what happens when we just go through life just having fun? People die. And I mean spiritually. When we're just going through life having fun, people die all the time. When I'm doing marriage preparation, I often ask a couple of questions. I said, is your future spouse, your fiancé, are they going to help you get to heaven? And then I ask them, do you see your vision? Do you see the main thing in your life? Your job as you get married is to help your spouse get to heaven. That getting to heaven in some ways is not actually about you per se, but it's fulfilling the mission. And the mission is rooted in love for God and love for a neighbor. And so in marriage, the beauty of that sacrament is in helping others get to heaven. And in the process, we end up helping ourselves get to heaven as well. But it's really not about us per se. Sometimes I get interesting answers to that question, because a lot of couples have never thought about it that way. I'll offer one last story. We just celebrated the feast day of St. John Vianney. He's the patron saint of diocesan priests. And so he was ordained a priest right after the French Revolution in France. And in the French Revolution, if you remember, the priests were either exiled, they were imprisoned, or they were killed, or they went into hiding. And that's because during the French Revolution, it was basically illegal to practice Catholic faith. And so what happened in many towns was the priests were all gone, and so the practice of the faith died. There were some pockets where the priests would be in hiding, and then they would be being priests in hiding. But in many towns that didn't happen, and so the faith just died. Well, St. John Vianney becomes pastor of a town called Ars. And in this little town, as he's going out there for the very first time, he's just been made pastor, they have not had a priest in decades. They have not had a priest because of the French Revolution. So he's the first one to go out there to reclaim the faith, to begin the faith all over again, if you will. And so he gets lost on his way to Ars. He can't find the little town. And he sits down just at a crossroads, and he just starts doing his breviary, his daily office, his prayers, and he figures somebody will come along and show him the way. He's not too worried about it. And so this little boy comes along, and he asks the little boy if he can show him the way to Ars. And so the little boy's like, well, I guess so, just follow me. So he begins to follow this little boy. But then he tells the little boy, he says, if you show me the way to Ars, if you show me the way to my new parish, I will show you the way to heaven. That's vision. Now, as he got to Ars had like 8 taverns, a bunch of drinking establishments. They had dances all the time. And the problem with these dances was that they weren't just dancing, right? There was all kinds of immorality happening in this town. People were just simply enjoying life. They didn't have a care, right? No mission, no vision, just enjoying life. So when St. John Vianney gets there, he gets a lot of enemies right away because he begins trying to close the taverns down. He tries to rebuild faith, which means giving them vision and a mission. It means getting them to go back to work spiritually. And at first, nobody wanted to do that. Very few people were coming to Mass. He canceled all their dances, and so those people were very upset with that because it's like, oh man, here comes a priest, and he's just a prune, he doesn't want to have any fun. But he was completing his mission, which was to help his parishioners get to heaven. It didn't really have anything to do with him per se. He was there just to bring Jesus Christ to them, and slowly but surely, he begins to win them over. And they begin to adopt vision of heaven. And slowly but surely they begin to adopt the mission. And slowly but surely they begin to journey to heaven. All right. God bless.